Whatever product or service you're offering to the world, you want it to get noticed, to stand out from the rest. That's what this episode is going to help you to do. Welcome to a rebroadcast of my interview with Sierra Janisse.
But really, I talk a lot about decision fatigue as a CEO, and branding consistency helps alleviate that decision fatigue. As a CEO of your side hustle, your full-time business, you have a ton of things to decide every single day, probably every hour. And which color to use on an Instagram post should not be one of those decisions that you have to wait. What font to use? So you should just have rules that you set for yourself. That's your branding. And then you just stick to it.
Welcome to Side Hustle Hero, the show that is laser focused to inspire you to take action to start or to scale your side hustle income streams. I'm your host, Joan Posivy, author of The Way Success Works, How to Decide, Believe, and Begin to Live Your Best Life. The expertise of today's guest is the real reason I wanted to have her on the show. Yes, she is a bona fide side hustle hero in that she was teaching middle school full-time when she started a hobby, which turned into a side hustle. But after 2 years, as the income from that began to exceed her teaching income, well, it was time to reevaluate her job situation. Her dear side hustle has now become her full-time six-figure company. Sierra Janisse is a brand, website, and funnel designer. In our conversation, she talks not only about her wins, but also her mistakes, which by learning from them, we can earn more. You'll hear how to leverage your website through 5 ways to boost client conversion that don't, and I repeat, don't require hiring a designer. Actionable tips for email marketing and growing your list in the age of inbox overwhelm. And after sharing so many great ideas to execute, Sierra provides us guidance on what to do first. Now here is my conversation with side hustle hero, Sierra Janisse. Welcome, Sierra.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Joan.
Since checking out your website, sierralindesign.com, I've been really looking forward to having this conversation with you. Clearly, you're very skilled as a copywriter and web designer. And I think every aspiring side hustle hero can be helped by having an engaging and compelling website. And I'll definitely be picking your brain for tips for myself and our listeners in that regard. But first, I'm curious, how did you pick up and then hone those skills?
That's a great question. My web design journey started really kind of niche or in one specific area. And then, like many of our side hustles and businesses, right, it grew into more and more areas and expanded as I learned more through the process of having my business. So I started really in the design only realm. And by design only, I mean pretty branding, colors, and all of that, which is great and important, but not so much the strategy and the copywriting and the conversion focus, which is so necessary for our online business. And by conversion, I mean getting new potential clients onto our email list, selling our offers, whether those are services or programs or products online. And so that were things I learned through online certifications, marketing certifications online, and different courses, as well as my own experience.
That's a good point, because it's one thing to have the content up there, but that's not going to necessarily generate clients and customers.
Exactly. We want beautiful websites, beautiful funnels, all of that also are profitable funnels and websites and helping us as business owners.
So who was your first client?
My very, very first client, and this is going to reveal my fun early on niche, is okay. I worked with specifically dog groomers and pet service providers because I have an adorable little dog. Hopefully we won't hear her barking in the background for the podcast. She's napping right now. So I thought to myself, I want to make websites. I'd already been designing websites. And I thought, well, what's a good niche, right? I need to narrow down. I thought in the shower, as we think of thoughts,
yes.
Oh, I have a dog. I like dogs. Why don't I make websites for dog breeders? Now, do I know anything about dog breeding? Absolutely not, which caused some problems later on, but it was a fun niche to be in. So one of my first clients, who actually is a recurring client for his other businesses that he has, breeds Rottweilers. And so I did his dog breeding Rottweiler website. It's actually still alive and well today. Top-notch canines, super fun, adorable dogs.
Oh, very cool. And so when you started designing, were you basically using those templates we all have access to online, or were you actually learning coding?
I started when I very first learned before I decided to make a web design business. When I was first just learning web design for my own hobbies and and side things, I started learning code. And that was great, but I thought, man, this takes me forever, to
Yes.
code an
Yeah.
entire website. So I started doing what we all do online as side hustlers, digging into YouTube and Google, and I found different page builders for WordPress. And I found one that I love that I still use today for WordPress websites, Elementor, which is a page builder. And if we're not familiar with page builders, that just means drag and drop. So you don't have to code, which makes
Yes.
things much faster and easier.
And accessible to
Oh,
us
yeah,
that are non-techie.
exactly.
Well, Sierra Lynn Design was a side hustle for a couple of years. What were you doing for your full-time work when you started it?
I was a middle school teacher, so I taught math and science for sixth, seventh, and eighth graders.
Okay, that's very left brain analytical, and
Oh,
web
definitely.
design is much more right brain creative. So you've
Exactly.
got talents on both sides.
Definitely. The web design started as my creative outlet. So I can do really, like you said, the left brain analytical side, then also have an outlet for my creative hobbies and passions.
Nice balance. How were you able to juggle both, doing teaching as and then trying to develop this business?
That's a great question. The short answer is it was a struggle to challenge both. It was a struggle.
Mhm.
However, I wouldn't undo any of it now. I have no regrets because through that struggle, I learned really great life balance, time management skills. Because I thought, okay, how do I do both of these things when they quickly became both full time? Originally, I thought my web design side hustle would remain a small side hustle, like I can do some things on the weekends, that sort of
Mhm.
thing. But I was very successful and it quickly grew more and more. And I loved doing it. I kept taking on more clients. And then I realized, wow, I'm waking up very early before school to do things. On my lunch break, I'm messaging
Yeah.
clients. And then after school, I'm coming home and working more, which was a lot all at once. But I did learn some good time management skills. And I learned a lot about, okay, how much time do I need to stay healthy and take care of myself, take care of my family and my loved ones while also devoting time to my work.
And how long did it remain a side hustle?
It remained a side hustle for, let's see, the school years make it nice because I know exactly when I start and stopped, right? So I was doing the web design business as a side hustle for a little more than 2 full school years. So about 2.5 years. And this last June was the end of my last school year, and I did not go back to teaching this fall.
Wow. What was that like making that decision?
It was emotional because as
Yeah.
like many teachers, that was also a passion job. I love kids and that was the best part of the job. It just got to the point where I realized I can't really do both feasibly, hours in the day wise. And so I was thinking, do I want to do part-time in one of them or maybe outsource more in my design business? And I realized I would really, really like to try going full-time in my business. I was already making more in my design business than I was teaching, even part time. And I thought, that would
Wow.
be an awesome life, right? Waking up, being in my home office like I am now, going to work. Thought that would be really fun.
So, what are a couple of things that you did to make your side hustle financially lucrative enough to be able to quit your teaching job?
I'll start with a mistake I made that would
Okay,
have made it more lucrative sooner. And then I'll talk about how I adjusted to kind of course correct later on. I
great.
definitely struggled with money mindset issues at first, or honestly still do. I think we all do to some respect there, in that I charged way too low for a
Yeah.
long time. I am a huge fan of freelancers that are new, offering reduced price or free work to build a portfolio. But there's a
Mhm.
time and place for that. And I was nervous. And so I offered free reduced price services much, much longer than I should have. And just because of that, it was hard to build profitability and sustainability. I thought it was okay though, because I was, paying my rent off my teaching job.
Right.
So I didn't think, oh, I got to raise my prices, even when I probably should have, just looking at general, web design market rate, comparing myself in a nice way. You can compare to what other people in your industry are charging.
But at
Yeah,
that point, you had the option of whether to increase it or not. Like you said, it wasn't a necessity. Yeah.
exactly. And so I just did it. And I thought, oh, why would anyone want to pay me more? That type of thing. And that was a big mistake. And I had some lovely coaching clients who I had coaching clients as in they were coaches, but I designed their websites. And they were like, Sierra, what are you doing? This is amazing work that you're doing. Thank you, but please charge more. And that really kind of whipped me into shape in a good way. and it got me charging more gradually. And that helped a lot when I found a nice balance there. I would recommend increasing prices, but you don't have to do so all at once.
Right.
Once I found that I could do step by step, eat a little more at each project after each project, that felt good to me, but it also allowed me to become more profitable over time.
And probably with each of those steps too, it was just a little bit out of your comfort zone each time rather than that big leap.
Exactly. I think back to the first time I asked someone for $300 for a whole website, and it was a mega, course website. No one should charge $300 for it, but I was so nervous, right? Because it was way back then. And so it was like, how am I asking for this? And it gets easier and easier by step.
What did it feel like to get that first paycheck?
Oh, it was amazing. I started screaming in front of my computer like this. Oh, sorry. For the listeners, I'm like moving my hands like a little kid back and forth. Yay. And I ran out and was like, oh my gosh, to my dog. Who just
right.
Yeah. And then I told my husband and was so excited.
Very nice. You've developed it now to the point where in its first year, it'll be hitting 6 figures. I'm assuming you have help.
I do.
You have employees or contract work. How do you handle that?
Yeah, great question. It's actually really new for me in my business because I just actually last week was interviewing for some additional contractors. I don't yet have any full-time employees. I'm definitely planning in that direction, but currently I have contract help. So my first contract hire was my accountant or bookkeeper because I knew I wanted to have all my legal and financial things ready to go, and I did not want to be doing that.
Good choice.
I love recommending. Start with what you have no idea and need. And then now what I was hiring for last week was I've hired several copywriters to help with the copywriting piece of website design. That's simply because while I do copywriting, my zone of genius is really the design. And so I thought, okay, how could I take on more projects? I don't like putting people on wait lists. That's okay for some designers, but I'd prefer to help people immediately. And I can do that if I have the support with the copywriting aspects.
Sure. I was going to ask you, what parts do you still look after, or what have you kept so far?
Yeah, I do all the design myself currently. So all the design pieces. And I really, really enjoy the customer care, the client customer care. And so I am the only person my clients meet with. I manage the projects, talk one-on-one in our strategy meetings, because I really like that part. And I could see potentially, having help with that. But at the moment, I really like it a lot. And I like communicating with my clients. So I'd rather outsource and get support on things on the back end. Yes. And get to, I think most important is really the client care. So I like to have my hands on that part.
Nice. And that makes sense because there are certain cues and nuances that you would pick up and have in your head from those interactions with them that would be difficult sometimes, or maybe inadvertently even missed, trying to pass that along to somebody that you're contracting. You mentioned one mistake, or as I'd like to call them, learning experiences. Any other growth learning experiences you've had?
Yes. That big mistake was my charging too low for a long time. My other really big mistake, although we can talk mistakes or learning experiences for days, another big learning experience was I didn't start with legal contracts in place, which is a huge mistake. Thankfully, I've been very lucky that I haven't gotten into legal trouble, even though early on I didn't have an official contract. I just kind of emailed people, hey, what do you think of this? And people were like, great. The problem I ran into was scope creep, or just not understanding how much work that was entailed in a website. So I would say, okay, we're going to build a website for you. My client would say, great. And then my wonderful client, I've always had wonderful clients, thought that meant something very different than I meant. So just it was a lack of communication on my part of what are we building here for a website? So learning to be clear.
When you're quoting a job, is it per hour or for the complete package?
I do for the complete package. Some designers do different, but I do, okay, we're going to do your website and all the things in your website, which should be listed out clearly, which I wasn't doing at first.
So there was
much money. Yeah.
So there was a disconnect between what they thought they were getting and what you were intending to provide.
Exactly. And I've heard a lot of other freelancers making similar mistakes, at the beginning, which is something we just have to learn as freelancers.
Yes, that makes sense. And so you probably I'll know for next time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When looking at your website, you refer to not only branding, but holistic branding. What is that?
Holistic branding is what I like to call branding that is comprehensive and encompassing all parts of your online business. So that means your website, of course, but not just your website. Really, I ask clients to think about all the places where people are seeing them online. If that's social media, it's whatever social media platforms you're using. If you do ads or pay-per-click funnels, that's your ads where you're showing up in Google. If you're featured on other places like podcasts, if you're brick and mortar or in person, like if you have print materials or business cards, that is part of your branding as well. So holistic branding is taking into account all of those things so that making sure that your client remembers you and learns you and comes to know you and trust you in all the places they're seeing you.
So there's consistency across all those platforms.
Yes, perfect. Exactly.
What are some things that our listeners could do to polish their brand? I guess that's the first step, is to take a look across everything that we're putting out to see if it's consistent or not.
Exactly. And I call that a brand audit, which is a great thing to do yourself for your own brand. I do it consistently for my own brand because it's amazing how inconsistent we become over time. Just naturally, it just happens because we're creating so much content for our audience with our different offers, which are free materials. So I like to look, pull up your phone if you have multiple screens or computer, that's great. And take a look at all of your different social media platforms, all your emails that you send out, all of your website pages. The key things to check for are colors, fonts, and image styles. Are you using the same font everywhere? It's amazing how often we're just not using the same font. Maybe your Facebook group banner has a different font than your Instagram posts and your website. It should be the same. Your colors, is it the same color or is it just shades of purple? We really want it to be that perfect purple color that you've picked out.
Okay.
Image styles is a great one to look at, even if you don't have professional brand photos. For example, some images, if you look at them, they give off a light, airy vibe and they feel kind of bright colored. Awesome. If you're going with that, all your images that you're picking should have that bright colors, airy vibe. Some are more dramatic and pristine. Great. They should kind of all have that feel. They shouldn't be super different in different places.
And I'm not just saying this because you're the side hustle hero today, Sierra. That's one of the things that stood out for me on your Instagram posts. As I brought it up on my desktop and I was scanning through them all, every image was different. And there were not a lot of different selected colors used, but there was that consistent feel throughout that was very noticeable. So obviously that was intentional.
That is intentional. You'd laugh if you see me with my Instagram pulled up on one screen so I can see that feed on my computer. And I'm designing on one screen and seeing, oh, I just used orange. I should use blue this time, or out of my brand colors because I want it to have that feel when you see it. And that's something that you can do on your own social media account as well. If anyone wants a fun journey, if you go to my Instagram and scroll all the way down, go really old, go like 6 months ago, you'll see the marked difference where I changed my branding. You'll say, oh, wow, now we've got purple and green going on. And you can see where I made that shift. And it's kind of fun to see.
Yes. Oh, that's an excellent exercise. And good tip about having one up in the desktop and the other one you're working out over here so that you can be more aware of that consistency.
Exactly. And I think that consistency, of course, is important for our clients for marketing purposes and brand awareness. But really, I talk a lot about decision fatigue as a CEO, and branding consistency helps alleviate that decision fatigue. As a CEO of your side hustle, your full-time business, you have a ton of things to decide every single day, probably every hour. And which color to use on an Instagram post should not be one of those decisions.
No.
You have to wait. What font to use? So you should just have rules that you set for yourself. That's your branding. And then you just stick to it. Simpler is always better. Just stick with it.
Because that would be part of the branding package then, that somebody should have that palette of colors, those fonts chosen that are consistent. And this probably ties in a little bit to my next question. When you and I were corresponding back and forth, you said that a website is more than a digital business card and that you could share 5 ways to boost client conversion. And this next line was the hook for me, Sierra, that don't require hiring a designer.
Yes.
What are those?
Yes, let's talk about all those 5 ways. And honestly, Joan, it could be more than 5 ways because a designer is wonderful and will do work for you, but you don't need one, right, to make these really simple changes. So when I said a website is more than a digital business card. What I meant was it should be making you money in your business. Your first thing to do with your website, whether you have one already or you don't, for our listeners, and this is our first tip, is to decide what's the goal of your website. I'll give some examples because this is different for every business.
Mm-hmm.
Your website goal can be to get people on your email list. If email marketing is a big part of what you do, that's a great goal. Perhaps your goal is to sell something. If you have an e-commerce site,
Okay.
like you sell earrings or t-shirts or dog leashes, that maybe your goal is to sell that.
Or you're a breeder of Rottweilers.
Exactly, like my friend. Exactly. Perhaps you're a coach and you need people to book a call with you. That's another common goal. Or if you're a high ticket service provider and people have to book a call with you, that's the goal. So you decide what that is for your website and your business. And then everything on your website should be focused to helping people get to that goal. You'd be amazed how many websites I see that are beautiful, that look really pretty, that are nice, but I don't really know what I'm supposed to do as a consumer.
I would imagine that would be a common error, is they're trying to put everything up on their website. So it's kind of a mashup of a lot of different things without a clear message.
Exactly.
Clear goal.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second step is once you've decided that clear goal, we need to have that in a call to action or a CTA or here, do this next, my website viewer. And my specific goal, though, is not just to have the CTA at the bottom of all your website pages. So that means when someone scrolls down, maybe we're on your homepage and there's pictures of you or your products, it says what you do and there's information, it's great. And then they keep scrolling. At the bottom, there should be a really obvious spot that tells them what to do. That's your call to action. Something like book a call now. And then there's a calendar, or click here to schedule your appointment, or buy or shop new dogs, things like that.
Perfect. Is there a way to do that isn't annoying for the visitor?
Totally, yeah. And that actually brings us to our third point as well, is what I like to call website hospitality.
Okay.
Just like you have hospitality when you welcome someone into your home, there are certain ways culturally that you just treat them to be polite. And that might be different depending on where we live, but there's just things you do to make someone feel comfortable. And we kind of forget that on a website. We think because it's just there, they're just going to look at it like they look at a brochure or a business card. But we actually want to do certain things to make it easy for them. And one of those is making the call to action not annoying. So one, making it really clear, as in it makes sense. For example, if you want someone to book a call with you and it's free, say, book a free call, I'd love to chat with you, or we'll talk about this in your call. Something that makes sense about what they're doing.
Yes. Don't
say something like, and I'm just going to make something random. Don't say something like, ready for your glow up, because I'm very unsure what that means. Even if glow up is kind of a fun slang that your people use or you use, I'm not super crystal clear on what I'm doing with that calendar there. Are you going to give me a makeover, or is this like an in-person thing, or are you going to like coach me? I don't know what's happening. So just be super, super clear all the time with your buttons, as well as that call to action, what you want them to do. That's going to help make people not annoyed. Also, as far as the not annoying, I found people are annoyed with pop-ups sometimes, which I definitely understand. You don't need a pop-up. You can do a pop-up, but you don't need one. A lot of people are annoyed by them.
That's what I was thinking of, was the pop-ups when I said annoying.
Yeah, especially
oftentimes it's like sign up for my newsletter pop-up.
And is that helping you as a client? No, it's not.
Especially when you first land on the website and it pops up. Like, I don't even know for sure what you're about yet. I don't know if I want to sign up for this newsletter. So that's something that you don't do with yours then.
Exactly. The only pop-up I'll occasionally do is an exit pop-up. So that means the pop-up shows up once they're leaving, because then you've got nothing to lose if they move their mouse away. And it could say something that's helpful, like, hey, don't go. Did you get this free thing? And I'm actually saying, did you realize I have this free thing for you, or you can get a free call or a free ebook or something? If it interrupts you while you're reading, well, you're going to be annoyed and less likely to finish reading something you were interested in.
Exactly. And that's usually what it is that frustrated click. I was just reading this. And it popped up. Okay. So you drop that CTA at the bottom of the page, then each page.
And it can be more places as well. More places is great. the more the merrier. I
Mhm.
actually like it at the top as well,
Okay.
but definitely at the bottom so that if someone scrolled all the way down and they're interested, which they are interested if they haven't left yet, they know what to do.
Sure. That sounds great.
That was number 3. We
Yeah.
had have a goal for your website,
Mhm.
then have that clear CTA at the bottom. And then number 3 was client hospitality, not being annoying with the pop-ups, making things really clear and easy for your people. One more note on the hospitality as well. Remember that your people are looking at your website on their phone while their kids are screaming and they're in line at the grocery store. So they're not really focused, and that's fine. That's okay. But it needs to be so obvious to them when they have all these other distractions going on.
Good point, that they're not necessarily 100% focused on your website.
Make it very easy. So the 4th main step that I love is actually an adaptation from Donald Miller of the StoryBrand framework, his marketing mythology, which is wonderful if people are interested, but he advises a 3-step marketing method where you break down what you do into 3 steps. Like step 1, do this. Step 2, we'll do this. Step 3, we'll do this. That's it. The reason we do the 3 steps, and I'll give some examples as well, is that 3 is a believable number for steps to achievement. If it was 2 steps, your client or customer would think, hey, that's too easy. And if it was more than 3, they wouldn't remember it. So an example for, let's say, a lawn care company. Step 1, book your call or book your lawn care consultation. Step 2, we'll come to your house and give you a lawn audit or whatever that's called. Step 3, enjoy your beautiful new landscaping.
Lovely. The end result.
Mm-hmm. For me on my website, if you head to, I believe it's on my services page, I have similar 3 steps, but of course it's about website design. Hey, book your call, then we'll do this, then we'll design your beautiful site. So it seems very simplified, but it's true. That is the steps that we go through.
And yes, breaking it down like that into 3 makes it sound easy.
Exactly. I even prefer to say getting started is easy because people want things to be easy. They don't want to know your complicated process. Even if your process is beautifully complicated and unique, that's great. Yes. They don't probably want to know that.
Exactly. Nice.
And then the last step is actually to consider something a little bit beyond the website, but it's tied into the website. Okay. As you know, Joan, I'm a funnel strategist as well as a website designer. So this is the bit of funnel strategy coming into play. We can't think of our websites as standalone, isolated little islands in the world because we need people to come to our websites. So the final step is to consider your traffic sources for your website. Or how are people going to get to your website? Once you've done these things, you have the 3 steps, you've got a call to action, you've got a goal, you've got client hospitality, you have a very, very good website going on. Yes. It's way, way above the cut. But if nobody sees it, it's not going to get anybody to do your goal. It's not going to get any bookings or any customers or any people reaching out to you. So we need to get people there. And there's a ton of ways to do this. Being featured on podcasts, like talking to you, Joan, talking to other podcasters, and where there's your link and people can go to your website. Many of my clients speak at in-person events. And when they're in person networking or speaking on stage, they direct people to their website with a QR code or saying the link. Many people will sell a book or an ebook on Amazon or somewhere else that links back to the website. Some people use ads or social media, organic marketing, sharing content on different social media platforms that links back to your website.
Right. And that ties back into our first point about the holistic branding. So that after they have had that first connection with you somewhere, when they land on your website, it looks familiar.
Exactly. They kind of feel like, oh, yeah, I know Joan, or oh, yeah, I know Sierra because I've seen her on Instagram or I've listened to her podcast and the website feels like you.
Those are great tips, Sierra. Thank you.
Absolutely.
As important as social media platforms are to our side hustles, unfortunately, as you well know, the mechanics of how they're run, the algorithms, for example, I'm looking at you, Instagram, are beyond your control. So that makes developing a direct relationship with our customers so very important. You shared with me that you have an engaged email list. What does engaged look like to you? And how do you do that? How do you do that in an age of inbox overwhelm?
That's such a great question. I love this. I believe it does start with that first goal on your website. Remember, I mentioned one opportunity for a goal is to get people on your email list. That's a big goal of my website. Not only do I want to, of course, sell website design to people, but I also want them on my email list. So I have several freebies or lead magnet things to attract them to the email list. Okay. I think starting an email list in this way sets you off for success because you're getting people on your list for a reason. They're like, ooh, I want that. I have some design templates and helpful swipe files. And they're like, hey, I want that, or I'm curious. And when they sign up, they get that delivered to them. That immediately gives their brain a subconscious little endorphin kick win of, oh, when I open an email from Sierra, it's going to give me something valuable. And you just want to keep that up, keep that momentum going. You're kind of like training your email subscribers that your emails are actually the ones that are either interesting or valuable. Yeah. If you have a sense of humor and are a writer, or on via video, you are engaging, you can go with the entertain route. So they know if I open it, I'm going to be entertained. It's going to be witty or funny or distract me. That's great. I'm not a very funny person, Joan, to be honest. I should probably take improv classes, but I do have a background in education. So I can make valuable emails. I can give tips. I can give trainings and ask for nothing in return. So really be careful of sending your new subscribers sales emails too soon. I see that a lot. Right. Like, hey, you're here. Okay, bye now. Right. We do want to sell, but make sure that they don't just think, oh, every email is just going to invite me to buy. It should be a really great deal or an amazing special you're letting them know about, or tips, things like that.
Right. Develop that relationship first by sharing the content, adding that value. So it's something that the email will actually get open. I suppose it would depend a little bit on the industry, but is there a guideline for how often those emails should go out after?
Yes, it's not a specific number, but there is a guideline. It does depend on your specific clientele and your industry. What you want to do, and you can look at this in whatever email platform you're using, you want to take your best guess. We'll start with the guest and then we'll adjust from there. You want to take your best guess in how often do my people, my type of people, my client demographic, actually check their email. I say that because online entrepreneurs, many of my clients, are in there multiple times a day. Whereas if you serve busy single moms, they may be in there once a week, depending, right, on how often they actually check their email. You want to send an email about every time they check their email. So there's a new one in there. You don't want to backlog, because if they come to their inbox and there's 2 unread emails from you, they're going to be like, well, I'm behind. It's too much. I better unsubscribe, even if it's good. Now, because you're guessing, you might be wrong at first. So you go back into your email system and you check the emails and you look at the unsubscribe rate. If there's an uptick in unsubscribes and people start unsubscribing, simply bump it out a day or 2 days and keep bumping the space out until no one's unsubscribing. And then you hit the sweet spot.
Got it. Because it could be that. And that's definitely, I guess, one of the important pieces to look at. But it could be content as well. Am I just trying to sell or, yeah.
Definitely.
Is there something that I should have asked you that I haven't yet?
Oh, what a good question, Joan. My brain is in email thinking land. So I'll say one more fun email tip I was thinking about that I've had good success with recently. I like to practice all aspects of funnel regularly. And I've been practicing with emails lately and re-engaging my list. And I found one great strategy that's very fresh right now, and I've seen other marketers also having success with this, is storytelling. Straight up storytelling, real stories from your life to start an email. For example, I sent an email to my list a couple weeks ago that told about when I was multitasking and had a bunch of things in my hands at one time. This couple days before I sent the email, and I was trying to carry this bag of flour from my garage because I was making dinner, and I dropped it, and I was covered in a cloud of white flour, and then was trying to vacuum up all the flour and not have my dog lick it up. True story, silly story, not that important, but I figured out a way to relate it back into taking time for what matters, which related to an event I was having. So if you can pick a little story out of your life, doesn't have to be that groundbreaking, like me dropping a bag of flour in the garage is not that groundbreaking.
Yes.
It's interesting. I have people regularly tell me after the emails I send, I really like reading your emails because they're always interesting. I'll share pictures of myself and my dog or my husband. And I'll talk about family events that are not deep personal things, just random things.
Yeah. And somehow, do you always make a point of tying it back into some aspect of your business or something coming
I do. And that does not mean I'm always selling something. It could just be a note of inspiration. Like I know I serve female business owners, so perhaps I'll give them a tip at the end that they can use in their business.
And everything that you shared, it's so important. How do you choose where to start?
That's a really, really, really good question, Joan, because there's a lot of good things, which means we can easily get overwhelmed because you've got a lot of things to do. What I like to suggest is that you look at your entire business, the whole mess of it. If you're visual like me, that means sticky notes everywhere of all the things you're doing. So, okay, I got my emails over here. Maybe you don't have an email list, but you want to start one. Maybe you got a website. Maybe you don't. You've got this social media. You're getting clients through these referrals, all the things. And then look and pick out the pieces where you are making most cash flow and say, how can I make this better? I think a lot of the times we start with our weaknesses. For example, if you find me on LinkedIn, there's like nothing there. I am not active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Could I be active? Yes. Could I do great things on LinkedIn? Sure. But I don't, because I know I'm getting a lot of clients from Instagram. So instead, I'm going to focus my energy into what is working and make that better. That is a more rapidly rewarding and helpful method, I think. So start with what is working first.
Great advice. Well, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Sierra?
Well, not LinkedIn, I guess. I'm never on there.
No.
Listeners can go to my website. I'm sierralindesign.com. You can also find me on Instagram or on Facebook. I have a free Facebook community that's really fun because we just share tips. People ask questions. We share branding. Lots of DIY branding designers in there to share different ideas for our small businesses.
Terrific. And I'll make sure that I get those links up on the show notes.
Awesome.
You had a secure position teaching middle school. You could have stayed on, yet you left that role to pursue your side hustle full time. So you know how to get things done. So Sierra, what's your best tip to help someone take big action on their side hustle dream?
Start with your dream. I want you to sit down and you can either write this down, or if you're just a subconscious thinker, you can think about it if you want to, or write it down if you need the reminder. But say to yourself, okay, in 6 months from now, Joan's going to interview me about my big side hustle success. Don't worry, Joan, I won't make people email you. But imagine that you've done something so great and so out of this world successful that Joan has to interview you because you're such a successful side hustler. Write down what that is and do not hold back because no one needs to see this. Are you making 6 figures, 7 figures? Could it be that you get to quit your full-time job? Could it be that you've totally automated everything? So it's like running without you. Any big dream, and that's going to look different for any one of us, write that down and then shoot for that goal. And every time you have to decide all those annoying things we're deciding every day,
yes,
look at your goal, have it on a sticky note on your computer or your wall and think, okay, what's going to help me get there faster? Even if it seems unreachable, that's what will happen. It'll help you get there faster.
That's a great tip because we can get so distracted by all those urgent things that aren't important in terms of aren't leading us. We've got to connect our goal to our daily activities.
Exactly.
Great tip. Thank you, Sierra, for sharing your inspiring story, your incredible tips on website design and what we need to look for, holistic branding, and of course, your email piece. Thank you so much. And for being today's side hustle hero.
Of course. Thank you for having me on, Joan. It was a pleasure.
I felt that what Sierra shared, she articulated so well, there really isn't a whole lot for me to expand upon. But then again, she was a full-time teacher. However, there is one thing I want to emphasize. When you're starting or scaling your side hustle, as you well know, there is so much to do. It can be overwhelming. And we can think, okay, when we reach this particular milestone, then we'll feel fulfilled. Or when we accomplish this certain goal, then we'll feel great. It's like we'll only feel satisfied sometime in the future when we've hit these milestones we've set. But you know what? Life is happening right now, at this moment, not when the goal is reached or the milestone achieved, but right here, right now. That's all we've got is the now. At the risk of sounding cliche, the secret sauce of life is really about enjoying the journey. Think about a goal that you strived for, that you achieved. Yes, it was fantastic when the goal was realized, but the real growth and emotion and fun and challenge was in the journey you took to get there. The same can be said for your current side hustle journey. And if you stay open to the possibilities, perhaps you'll get there using a different path, taking a different journey than you had initially mapped out. Maybe that'll be a topic for a future takeaway segment. Well, that's a wrap for today. You'll find a link to Sierra's website, sierralyn.com, and her social media links in the show notes and on our website, sidehustleheropodcast.com. And I'd love to hear your feedback on the show, on the guests, how this podcast is helping you. What areas could we do better? What did you find particularly helpful from my conversation with Sierra? Shoot me an email message to hello@joanposivy.com or by DM on Instagram @JoanPosivy. Thanks for listening, enjoy the journey, and hustle on.